My guest today is the British jazz saxophonist Julian Costello, who, for his new album, is joining forces with an unusual combination of instrumentalists. I've caught up with him to discuss the motivation behind his album. First thing I would really like to know is like the motivation for doing the album in the first place, whose idea it was, how did it come about?
Okay, the one that we're going to talk about is by a group called Vertigo, which is very much my idea of putting together a particular group of musicians. So it features Natalie Rosario on the cello, which is not normally an instrument you hear in jazz, is it? So cello, and then with another musician that I've played with in a few different other things and done gigs with, whose name is Stefanos Tsourelis, and he plays the guitar, but he also plays the oud. He's a fantastic guitarist, and also a wonderful oud player. And then the drummer is a fantastic drummer called Sophie Alloway, who I've also been playing with on and off for years. So I knew all the musicians already, but I've kind of pulled them all together. So it's quite an unusual combination. So you've got tenor and soprano saxophone, cello, and Natalie also sings.
Mm-hmm.
She's an amazing singer. Then Stefanos on guitar and oud, and Sophie kind of gluing it all together on the drums. And then for the album, I wanted to have a tabla player as well. So we're joined by a great tabla player called Iqbal Pathan, and he just turned up and did it on the day actually.
And why did you want a tabla player?
Because I love the tabla.
Why do you love the tabla?
Oh gosh, it's just so evocative of kind of being in India, and it's such amazing. So when you learn to play tabla, you learn this thing called bowl or bowls, which is the Hindu word for words. So you learn to play. So there's one tune on the album which is called Stonehenge, which starts with Iqbal saying the bowls of the rhythm. So it's like there's a rhythm and there's a pitch. Da din din da taka dika din taka boom di boogie. I can't do it. Doom da da da, and then you get the rhythm that you've just said. You've learnt to say with all the pitches and everything, and you replicate it on the tabla. It's amazing. So the track starts with him saying the 22 beat. It's a 22 beat rhythmic cycle which repeats. Then he plays it on the tabla, and then we play this riff along to the tabla cycle, which is a repeating riff or ostinato, we might say. Then there's improvisation within that. So the riff goes round, and there's a saxophone solo, and then there's an oud.
Oud comes from, where does the oud come from again?
Ooh,
it's not Iran, is it? No.
That's a difficult question. People
Turkey?
argue.
No.
Right, that's the thing. There's an argument about it.
Okay.
So I don't want to upset Steph if he ever gets to hear this, but it's kind of North African, Turkish, Greek, perhaps Iranian as well. It's kind of moved from that around that part of that plateau, that part of the world, and I think there's different tuning systems.
Okay.
It's great. It's beautiful sound.
Yeah, and I mean, I just wondered, like, how consciously were you trying to kind of blend cultures?
Very much, yeah, because you've got this kind of Middle Eastern, as we call it,
Influence.
oud. Then you've got the Indian tabla, and then the saxophone is a European instrument, isn't it?
So I just wondered what it was about jazz music that lends itself to using instruments like the tabla or the oud or the nada as well, or musical systems that you find in the countries that those instruments come from.
I think it is a lot to do with the improvisation. A
What?
lot of music around. I mean, most music around in the world is not intended to be written down, is it?
No.
I mean, if you think, Irish traditional music, folk music in the British Isles, and the entire continent of Africa, India.
So something about the spontaneity of it, the kind of doing it in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, the tabla. I mean, I've grown up listening to saxophone players like Jan Garbarek, and he's done a few albums with different tabla players. So the tabla has, another saxophone player called Charlie Mariano, who uses tabla players. I'm sure there are others as well. Andy Shepherd's got a great album with a tabla player on it. So the tabla. I'm not the first one to do this.
You're not the first. But there's something about the tabla. Why the tabla?
Well, I don't know. But the oud as well. I mean, there's not that many players. There's another oud player in London. I can't remember his name. But the great oud player that's around is from North Africa, who's Anna O'Brien, and he's managed to really work with a lot of jazz musicians. I suppose a lot of what he does are their riffs on the oud, and a lot of jazz is made up of riffs.
So in that way you've got something in common there.
Yeah, I mean it's a mixture because with Stefanos, I said to him when I asked him to do this band, when I was asking them all, this is my idea and this is what I'm putting together. I said to Stefanos, I want you to play the Strat, the Fender Strat electric guitar, and your oud. And his eyebrows were a bit raised because the Strat's not often the guitar that's used in jazz. So I said, no, I want you to bring more of a Hendrix, Jeff Beck kind of vibe. Because when I was growing up as a teenager, my great music love was
Hendrix?
Jimi Hendrix, yeah.
Okay.
And that led me on to John Coltrane and jazz.
So talking about you growing up, let's talk about you growing up. How did you get into music?
So, how did I get into music? I mean, I can't really remember much music before I had a stepbrother. I had a foster brother, rather, when I was growing up, that my dad looked after. He lived with us, and he said, "Hey, listen to this," and it was Electric Ladyland by Jimi Hendrix, and I had a tape of the last side, and it kind of...
How old were you?
I think I was about 14.
14. So pre-14.
I just can't really remember what music.
Can't remember what music listened to before pre-14.
I think I was into the Beatles, like we all are. Were you into the Beatles?
I was. Yeah.
You have to, don't you? You have to listen to the Beatles. They're great.
But that was what you were listening to when you were growing up.
Yeah, I think my dad bought me a drum kit. He said, right, if you're going to be listening to this kind of music. Oh, actually, I do remember one. I was really into the Sex Pistols. Because of growing up in Chelsea when I was younger, and it was all happening on the King's Road, just round the corner from me, and I used to hang out there and stuff in the shop that was called Boy, and wearing zippy trousers and stuff. So I was really into the Sex Pistols, but and then my dad said, look, if you're going to listen to this music, why don't you play it as well? And he got me a drum kit.
Okay, and you were how old then? This was before you were...
I was about 13.
Okay, so it wasn't like the kind of childhood where you grew up playing this or that, playing the piano when you were 4 years old, that kind of thing.
No, didn't do that. Wasn't in school orchestras or anything like that.
Nothing no classical music around,
no.
Nothing.
My dad played a lot of classical music to me because he liked classical. He was into classical music. So I grew up listening to a lot, but I never played it.
Okay, but you had heard it. It just makes a big difference if you are listening to it, if it's around.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
And I would kind of put on, punk records and play along on the drums.
Okay, but playing an instrument only started in your teens, really, and that is an amazing thing. I don't know whether
it makes a difference which instrument you start, because you hear about the violin and the piano being things you need to start when you're really, really young.
You do.
But for those two, you do hear about having to have that finger dexterity. But I don't know why it should be.
Strength as
Is
well.
it about the strength?
Yeah, because I think you can learn the cello when you're much older. But I think it's just because there's so little space on the fretboard of the violin, and you need to build up the dexterity, but also the strength in the fingers.
Yeah, perhaps that's what it is. But with brass instruments, you would think it would be the same, because you have. I mean, with the saxophone, there's a lot of dexterity that you need.
Yeah, but no, you can take up the saxophone at any age, I would say.
You think so? And you could build up. Could I take it up now?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, 38. Never too late. Okay.
I'll teach you.
You'll teach
Yeah,
me.
you
Wow.
pick it up really quickly, Hannah.
You think so?
You would.
Yeah, I might surprise you in that respect. But you started off with the drums.
So
You said you were a frustrated drummer.
I'm a frustrated
You
drummer
still are
now.
a frustrated drummer.
So
Okay.
I mean, I was quite good. I was in bands, and I was in a sort of rock band on the drums, which was good. We used to do kind of a Hendrixy type thing when I was at sixth form college. And we did a lot of gigs and stuff. And then, but when I kind of discovered Coltrane and jazz, I suddenly decided, right, saxophone.
Okay, and that's okay. So it was when you discovered Coltrane that you went the jazz way. What was it about Coltrane? What was it about jazz?
It's just amazing music. Well, it's just the sound, the interaction between the musician, the rhythm of the saxophone, and the idea, the flow of idea, his flow of ideas. And I used to think, I mean, knowing about the kind of development of classical music, I used to think in a very small amount of time, what happened to John Coltrane as a person and his musical development was a mirror in 10 years of kind of hundreds of years of classical music. Just more and more melodic, more and more stretching harmonies, making the music stretch the boundaries of tonality, and then spilling over into atonality or free jazz, which is what you might say, late Coltrane, where where the tune, the chords, the harmony's just gone out the window, and it's just improvisation, I do like to hear musicians, going for it. Well, if you ask, a class of kids, what does improvising mean? Mostly they would say making it up on the spot would be the normal response, but of course it's not. When you're improvising 99 times out of 100, you're playing something that you've worked on or you've played before. The total spontaneity is really hard to achieve. I mean, what's spontaneous is how all those things link together to form, say, a solo or whatever, an improvised solo. But actually, most of those things, in some way, you've played before.
And there are patterns. There are patterns that you've learned.
And phrases, and I mean, jazz is a language, so there's things that you've played before.
A bit like learning a language, and you know the grammar of it.
And you know the grammar, and you know some vocab, and it comes out in a different way.
You have to have a conversation where you think of which order you're going to put them in.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's something exciting in that, isn't there? That it exists really in the moment. Is there a fear factor there for you? Was there, to begin with, when you started doing it? Was there? Did it make you nervous or anxious?
You mean when I was younger?
When you were younger.
No, I enjoyed the energy and stumbling and failing and trying again.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you didn't. The idea of failing in that, even in a small way, didn't bother you.
I mean, sometimes now, I mean, playing music is all about being in the zone and having the right headspace. Once you start playing a phrase and improvising, and you're playing that phrase, and then hopefully the next one comes into your head, and then the next one, and the next one.
That's the hope.
You can't have anything else going on in your mind. If you're worried about anything, it's just going to get in the way and stop you being in the zone.
Which I suppose is kind of the beauty of it, isn't it? That you can't, there's no space for anything else. It's almost
There's
like
no
a,
space for anything else
I
in
mean,
your
if there's
brain.
something that you're worried about or,
It
you know,
goes.
fretting about, yeah,
It's gone.
there's no way.
No way. So that's when improvisation is going really well, when one idea leads to another, leads to another.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got other things in your mind, I mean, it's complicated, isn't it? Because at a gig, sometimes you can have someone can distract you. They might say something, or things happen, or you're worrying about the band, or worrying about yourself, and there's a lot of things that need to fall into place.
So how do you empty your mind of that stuff then? Is there a technique to it, or does it just, with years of doing it, it happens by itself?
There are techniques you can use. Sometimes when I talk about this with my students, I talk about if they have these issues about how to get in the zone. Right? That's what we're talking about. Closing your eyes helps.
Okay.
Or finding a spot on the corner in the ceiling or something and focusing on that, so that you're actually then more aware of what's going on in your head.
Mm-hmm.
In a way now, I mean, I do get in the zone these days, but sometimes if I think about it, and I try not to, when you've got so much information in your brain and knowledge, when you're actually soloing and improvising, you want all that to go away.
Yeah.
You want it to come out in a natural way, not to be forced and not to be overthought, and that can be quite difficult.
That's true. Yeah, but you're very sort of in person. That's what you're like. You're very spontaneous, very comfortable, just sort of existing in the moment. You don't feel like you've come in and you've got
And
your.
that's funny because we know each other in an interesting way and haven't really seen each other for years.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels quite comfortable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have always been like that, and it was what made your music lessons. I should say, for the benefit of people listening, that Julian Costello was my music teacher at school. That was what made your lessons very interesting, was the fact that you didn't feel like you had been studying this stuff, that you were just kind of regurgitating from some book. It felt like you were just dreaming up the lessons in the moment.
I mean, otherwise it's going to be really stodgy, the improvisation. You want it to sound fresh and of the moment, really, as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Hard.
So do you think classical musicians should do more improvisation?
Back in the day, I think that if you studied so-called classical music, and there was no improvisation required, and then I think there's more and more improvisation that's crept in, and now I feel that if you meet a classical musician that doesn't improvise, they're quite likely to apologise for that.
For the fact that they don't
For the fact, I'm
improvise.
sorry, I don't improvise.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, back in the day, it wouldn't have been
Something that was expected.
something that was expected at all.
Do you think this is because these different types of music are coming together now, or is it something
Oh,
they're coming closer together?
yeah, because you said an interesting thing to me earlier. You said you get these CDs through the post to review,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's ever a CD from the repertoire,
Mm-hmm.
you go, oh no.
Boring.
But as soon as it's something different,
Mm-hmm.
maybe coming to different juxtapositions of different styles and musicians, you go, ooh. But there's some great collaborations, like, I mean, I mentioned Jan Garbrecht famously did quite a few albums with the Hilliard Ensemble, and they're singing kind of what you call a Gregorian chants, and he improvises. So they actually sing and deliver a Gregorian chant as it's understood to have been sung, and then he improvises with it. But they were those albums he did were really, really successful. But John Sermon, who I also mentioned, also in a group which has done sort of kind of John Downland songs, but then put kind of soprano saxophone improvised.
Oh, that's also fantastic. Yeah,
beautiful, beautiful, really nice.
But do you think there's a lot to be said then for taking some of these elements of jazz, like specifically the spontaneity of it and the improvisation, and putting into classical?
I think jazz musicians tend to be quite open to different ideas. I mean, as I'm saying that, I'm wondering if that's true. I think so.
But do you think classical music can benefit from it? In what way do you think classical music can be has the potential to be a bit stodgy without that element?
Could be.
And sort of,
I find it liberating to throw away the music stand and get rid of the music as quickly as possible. I find, to me, that's because it engages a different part of your brain.
I mean, I guess because the best classical musicians can bring that spontaneity into their performance.
I mean, because Bach was supposed to be an amazing improviser.
Yeah, all these Beethoven as well wasn't he? That they were very.
Yeah, that's right.
They were really good improvisers, but now there isn't really a space where you can go and play, I don't know, a piece of Bach and then play an improvisation on it so much. You don't find it very much.
I mean, I remember talking about the difference between, kind of back in the day and classical musicians not improvising, and then where we are today apologising about improvising. I remember my dad telling me a story, because he played piano when he was at school, and he went to a very sort of traditional grammar school and was taught by monks.
Oh.
And he had a piano lesson, and the monk father, brother, whatever, was late, and he was improvising. And this teacher heard him improvising from afar as he was walking towards the place for the lesson. And when he came in, he said, "Put your hand out." He put his hand out, and he whacked his hand with a ruler and said, "You never do that again. You play what's on the page."
Really? Gosh.
But he realised that he could hear things, a tune, and work it out. A hit from the day, whenever in the 50s or whatever, and work out the chords and work out the tune, and he was enjoying doing that.
Was it something about sort of a lack of respect for the notes on the page, like knowing your place?
I'd love to go back in time and talk to that person and say, "What do you realise what you're doing to this young person?" I.e., my dad. You're putting him off. Now you'd say, "Wow, that's amazing! You can do that. Cool. You can just hear something and play it. Wow, you can hear something on the radio and work it out."
That's something to be cultivated. That's good. Yeah.
And seen as a real positive, even if you're learning to be a concert pianist.
Precisely, and that's the thing. You don't have to be making up music to be improvising. You can be playing music that's written in an improvisatory way.
Yeah. Definitely.
Playing it as if you haven't played it a million times before.
I'd like to ask, is there a kind of vulnerability to writing and performing your own pieces as a jazz player?
I feel very vulnerable when I hand out the compositions to such great musicians.
Oh, really? So it's almost like what
really
they think.
They're really, super heavyweights. And you're giving your little ditty to them,
So more with them than playing it, say, in a gig.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. So once you've got the thumbs up from them, it's okay.
If I get the thumbs up from the other musicians, then that's good enough for me.
So, bringing the focus back to your album, it's obviously based on a very interesting concept and combination of ingredients. But I'd like to ask, is there a risk of relying too heavily on the concept at the expense of, say, content?
There is a danger sometimes when the ingredients are very interesting and the concept is very kind of out there. It can.
I think. I mean, Vertigo. It's melodic.
Yes, I think melody is a really important.
It is melodic. It's not. It's not particularly difficult listening.
Yeah, and I think that's an important ingredient. I think people can sometimes get carried away with the concept of it and neglect the meat and potatoes.
We would. I always think I'd kind of run to the barricades to defend its right to exist, but that doesn't necessarily mean I like it.
Yeah, what we're talking about very kind of atonal, contemporary music,
or stuff that's super complicated or something, but there's a theory behind it, but you might not actually like to sit down and listen to it.
Yeah, like it's all theory.
You defend its right to exist because it's maybe breaking new ground, or it's interesting, or
like some music is better to study than to actually listen to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, to understand the principles behind it.
So you're enjoying the conceptual nature of it without
having to go through the pain of of hearing the thing. Yeah, there are two different kinds of music like that, aren't there?
Yeah. Well, hopefully Vertigo is more accessible and listenable too, but still conceptual, I hope.
Should I turn? I have now turned it off.
You can do.
Oh, I'm going to say it's been a pleasure talking to you, Julian. Thank you very much for talking to me. This is what you say. It's been great. Thank you.
Wonderful to talk to you.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more of the same, then feel free to hit subscribe on our channel, or for more similar coverage, visit our website at www.thecuspmagazine.com. Thanks, and I'll see you another time.